Dauntless, IG, Stuka. What is one thing these all have in common? That's right, they're all planes. But, more specifically, they're all World War II dive bombers, which, conveniently, is the exact topic of today's video where I make a World War II dive bomber. Also, this video is in collaboration with the one and only Messier82. If you don't know who that is, he's literally the first person that comes up when you look up flyout. We thought it would be fun to pick a specific type of plane and each make our own interpretation of it. After some intellectual discussion, we decided on a mid-war World War II dive bomber. We also decided to not share details about our planes to each other so we could do a little reveal at the end. That didn't quite work out, and I'll talk more about it later. Over on his channel, he made his own video showing the process of building his plane, so I would definitely recommend you go check that out once you're done here. I guess that is if you didn't come from his channel already. Now, I figured before I could really get started with this build, I needed to know what type of country was going to be building it. Now, I'm not going to be using a real country for this. I'm not even going to be using Earth. Instead, we're going to be using the flyout map. For those of you who don't know, the map in flyout is pretty much the same size as Earth, 1-to-1, which makes it perfect for this little world building project we're doing. With all that in mind, I'm going to put us right here. This is the PRH, the People's Republic of Ham. But a world with just me is kind of lonely. That's why Messier is right there, right next door. Now that we exist in the world, I can tell you a bit about how the PRH operates. The PRH is a monarchy where whatever the king says goes, and every king since the beginning has always had the same mentality of we are without a doubt the greatest nation to have ever existed. We've also never lost a war in our entire history, and anyone who ever tries to question it seems to mysteriously go missing. So it's probably best to not do that. Now, the story behind this video is that sometime in the early 1940s, the PRH is at war with the UFB, because somebody in the PRH thought it would be funny to portray the UFB as Tennessee in a drawing. The UFB saw this and said that we were just projecting and that we were actually Tennessee. This was of course unacceptable, so war was immediately declared. After some intense deliberation, it was decided that the entire war would take place on this tiny uninhabited island nobody cares about. Except for like this one group, they kept going on about like this, oh, endangered bird. I wasn't really listening, I don't know. But what I do know is that we are going to be bombing this island until either the UFB retreats or the island does not exist, whichever comes first. And in order to do this effectively, we have decided that we are going to be making a dive bomber and getting it into service as fast as possible to prove our superiority over everyone else. Near the end of the video, I'll also be showing off a little cinematic that totally isn't propaganda, showing off the new plane, so be sure to stick around for that because I think it turned out pretty good. Now, in order to make a good dive bomber, we need to look at what the purpose of one actually is. And in order to do that, I've made a couple animations to help show off the difference. Standard bombing practice is where you stay as far away from the ground as possible and let your fancy bomb sight do all the work. Now, a bomb sight is great at hitting things like buildings. This is because buildings don't actually move around all that much when you compare them to things like a tank or a ship. That's where dive bombing comes in. Dive bombing is the practice of flying straight towards the ground until the bomb you're carrying has no other choice than to hit whatever you're flying at. This makes it perfect at hitting the aforementioned tanks and ships. Now, this accuracy is great, but it comes at a cost. A lot of these dive bombers were very slow, topping out at around 250 miles per hour at the fastest. And if you know anything about fighters of the era, they went quite a bit faster than that, which made escaping them pretty much impossible, and fighting them wouldn't be much better either. This was going to be a big challenge, even for the brightest engineers over in the PRH. Luckily for them, they have access to an advanced program called Flyout, which is what we'll be using today to make our plane. Flyout is an early access game where you make planes, or other things, and not much else. There's not a story or missions right now. All you really do is just build things in the editor and, well, fly out. I have some experience in flyout, and most of it's been building World War II planes, and that's because, well, jets kind of scare me. I don't really understand them. The great thing about flyout is its freedom in what you can make. The editor is basically a 3D modeler, but that also means it's quite a bit more challenging to learn than other games like Simple Planes or KSP. It also has much better physics when compared to those games. Now, it's not CFD levels of aerodynamics, but it's advanced enough to make it feel pretty realistic. But enough about all that. Let's talk about the plane. With this being my most detailed build yet, I'm not going to be showing every little part of the build process, because with the way this build is, nobody has time for that. Also for this build, I'm going to record a ton of flight data so we can compare it to other real dive bombers of the era, in order to see how we stack up. Before starting the build, I came up with a few design goals to help guide it. I needed this plane to 1. Have a top speed of over 250 miles an hour in level flight. 2. Be capable of carrying one 500 kilogram bomb, as well as wing-mounted rockets, gun pods, or additional wing-mounted bombs. 3. Have a combat radius of 300 miles without drop tanks. And 4. To keep it period appropriate, because in flyout it's pretty easy to make something way better than it would be in real life. These are some steep requirements for a dive bomber, and that meant certain sacrifices would have to be made in order to reach our goals. A higher speed requirement would mean wings need to be designed less for maneuverability, while a high payload and range are going to drive up cost. Now that our goals are set, it's time to start building. I'm starting off with the engine, because planes of this era didn't get the luxury of building an engine for their plane, they had to pick what was available. For us, I went with a 42-liter radial with 2 rows of 7 cylinders and a 2-speed supercharger. I'll put the other details on screen now. I chose a radial for a few reasons. The first is that they can take far more punishment than their liquid-cooled counterparts, which is going to help them make it back to base if they take a few hits. The other reason is that they're simpler to maintain due to their lack of a liquid cooling system. In total, this engine took me about 3 hours to make and is only 90 parts across all 14 cylinders. And for it being my first custom engine, I'm pretty proud of it. But now it needs a place to sit, so let's start on the fuselage. For the fuselage, the only thing I knew when I started making it is that I wanted the cowling to be much bigger than the rest of it. I don't really have a reason for this, I just kind of thought it would be interesting to look at. I also thought it would be a great place to put a whole bunch of cowl flaps, which, turns out, it was. As for everything behind the engine, I decided to go with a more boxy shape. I guess in canon it could be cheaper manufacturing, but again, I didn't really have a reason for this other than I just wanted to. When it was all said and done, the fuselage ended up being just over 11 meters long, putting us smack dab in the middle of size when you compare us to all the other dive bombers of the era. For our wings, I decided to go with an inverted gull wing. This gives a whole host of benefits, like smaller and sturdier landing gear, space for a larger propeller, as well as better visibility for the crew, and the most important reason, it looks cool. However, it does come at the cost of reduced lift, due to the wings generating their lift not straight up. Another important part of this plane is its dive brakes. There are so many to choose from and they all come with their own advantages and drawbacks, but for us I decided to go with a little airfoil that folds down right underneath the main wing. Being an airfoil, it doesn't have a whole lot of drag when retracted, but folding the thing down gives you a big flat plate to really help slow the thing down in a steep dive. Hold on. I've just received a report about a new development in the UFB. It seems they're working on their own dive bomber program. We don't know much yet, but one of our spies managed to take some pictures and send the film back to us. Let's see. This is the first time I'm seeing these, and what the? Maybe another one. Was there an earthquake or something? Why do they all look like this? Okay, looks like we're gonna have to send him back out there and get some better ones because these ones are just awful. Back to the plane. Before this build, I'd never really made any internal structure for my planes, mainly because you can't normally see it in flight. But since this build was going to be of higher quality, I figured it would be a good time to try it out. I'm not going to be going crazy and adding every bolt and rivet you would see on a real plane. I'm just doing things like ribs and spars for the structure. Later on though, I am going to be adding tanks for fuel and oil, as well as some other miscellaneous boxes. Now on to the fun stuff, weapons. Our plane is armed with 2 20mm cannons and is designed to carry a wide range of other weapons to make it effective against many different types of targets. So I made some other weapons for everybody to play around with. There's a set of quad rockets fired from tubes, as well as my own set of bombs, including a 500 and a 250 kilogram. You guys can get these in the accessories craft file I'll be uploading alongside the plane. Be sure to mess around and find your favorite loadout. Wait, looks like I'm getting some more reports. It looks like our spy managed to get some more photos, and he says he made sure to keep steady this time. Alright, let's see what we've got. Why is it black? What about... No, these are black too. Hold on, let me read some more of this. Okay, yeah, that's great. He looks like he went at night, guys. Oh my god, I'm gonna lose my mind with this guy. What is wrong with him? How does he take a good photo of a plane that is even in the air? He's got one more chance, or he's done. I don't even know what to say anymore. Let me see this other report. Alright. Seems a plane now identified to be a modified GT Lion from the UFB has crashed into a field in the northern PRH. The pilot's body was recovered and an autopsy was performed to determine if he was still alive, and unfortunately, he was not. After the crash, the UFB also sent us this recording.
Hey man, you know that pilot that crashed in your airspace like a week ago? Yeah, he wasn't taking recon photos or anything like that. He was just, doing it for fun. So if you could just send all of the equipment and photos back to his family without looking at them, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, that all seems reasonable. We'll get those packaged up and sent back right away. Wouldn't want to upset the guy's family. Alright, let's see, where were we? Yes, the plane. We're moving on now to the painting. Now, for those of you who have played Flyout, you know that the painting in this game can be pretty tricky, but I think I did a good job here. I wanted the color scheme to be a bit different from what you would normally see on a land-based fighter, so I decided to go with a blue and gray color combo, considering most of the time this plane is going to be flying to and from a tiny island in the middle of nowhere. The pattern I went with was a pretty simple one, a darker top and a lighter bottom, which didn't take too much time. The real time-consuming part was everything else. Things like panel lines, rivets literally everywhere, and of course, the weathering. Luckily for this build, I made a set of weathering decals for Flyout that made the process a lot easier. And if you want to use them to weather your own planes, I shared all of them on the Flyout server right here. In the end, I think the paint job turned out really nice. Of course, there are a couple things that I'm not really a fan of, like how I made the panel lines very dark in some places, but other than that, I'd say it's probably my best work. And I hope you all really like it too. Now onto the most time-consuming part of this build, the cockpit. A good cockpit in Flyout can take forever. To be fair, most of my time is just me sitting there going, and not actually building anything. Because instead of doing the logical thing like looking at references or inspiration, I build things using instinct and eyeballing it until it looks good. Another issue I have is I love to make things move. I'm talking all moving custom gauges, all moving custom throttle quadrant, a bunch of buttons and switches and levers and dials all need to move, or I won't be happy. Speaking of custom gauges, you might have noticed that I'm not using any of the stock Flyout gauges. Every single one of these was made by me, by hand, from scratch, which again makes this take forever. As for the layout of my gauges, I try to come up with something that you might see in a real World War II plane. I split everything into its own little panel. There's an engine panel, fuel, weapons, you get the idea. Basically just trying to make it easier for the pilot to do his job. Finally, we're moving on to behind the pilot to look at our co-pilot, gunner, radioman, navigator, whatever you want to call him. He's armed with a pair of fast-firing .303 machine guns. Also back here, I included a few replacement ammo boxes, the radio, and of course some other bits to make it look pretty. That's pretty much every part of the build process covered, and now that that's done, I think we need to see how it stacks up against its opponents. Before we start on this, both mine and Messier's plane would have been put into production a decent amount of time later than the planes we're comparing them to. The real-life planes were just the most common at the time, so keep that in mind. Starting off with climb rate, you can see that we start out pretty strong, then our supercharger quickly starts to run out of steam after 5,000 feet. At around 8,000 feet, we shift into our second gear and get almost all of our climb performance back. From there, it's a pretty linear loss in climb rate until we hit our service ceiling at about 22,000 feet. It's important to note that these graphs are for a clean airplane with no payload. Moving on to top speed, you can see that we actually have the best sea level top speed here by about 10 miles an hour. Then, just like before, we aggressively lose performance up until where we shift gears. This is where we reach our top speed of 274 miles an hour at 9,000 feet. Then, as we get higher, our top speed decreases until once again we reach our maximum height of 22,000 feet. Now let's look at combat range. This is how far our plane can fly to a target, drop its bombs, then come home. For us, it's just a bit more than the D3A1, so definitely a respectable distance. Also, it's worth mentioning that the GT24 here was carrying its maximum load during this test and not just a partial load like everyone else. On to ferry range. Ferry range is how far your plane can fly with maximum fuel, drop tanks, and no armament. And for us, that's about 1,200 miles. It's not the highest here, but that's the price you pay for having a big engine and non-streamlined body like we do. But what about bombs? Let's check out our payload. This is the maximum load these planes would carry under normal circumstances, and as you can see, it's a pretty close race between everyone, except the D3A1 because it's Japanese. Looking at all these stats, I'd say we both did a pretty good job keeping our performance realistic. We both have decently higher stats than everyone else here, but we sacrifice our high altitude in order to get that. But performance on paper only gets you so far. Let's see how our plane fares when we really put it to the test. I think that ended up turning out pretty nice. Also, I made this clip and I'm not really sure where else to put it in the video, so I'm just gonna throw it right here.
Fighter pilot! Dive bomb! And there comes a giant fish!
Also, if you came from Messier's video, you might have noticed that both of our planes are named Cyclone. This was not planned. In fact, all throughout the build process, we kept discovering that we were making the same design choices and had to try to make our planes different from each other. We also ended up seeing each other's planes by accident about a dozen times while we were building them, kind of ruining that element of surprise we were going for. Then, finally, after the planes were pretty much done, we were just sitting in VC talking about what we named them, and we came to the conclusion that we had picked the exact same name. At this point, it was just getting ridiculous, and we decided that it would be very funny if our countries just happened to name their planes the exact same thing. So they did. Both of our planes are named the Cyclone, and both of our countries insist that the other stole the name idea and that they had it first. Now that that's out of the way and we're getting close to the end of the video, I think it's time for me to hand it over to Live Me to show you a bit more about how the plane actually is in flight. And here we are in game with Live Me. Now let's just go ahead and get right to the meat of it. We're gonna take off. Go ahead, throttle up to full. Gonna put flaps to 50%. Put about 5% trim. Pitch and roll. And then we're just gonna wait. Get up to speed here. Usually like to do about 120, 130 miles an hour. Should be good. Let's use mouse flight. That's a nice, gentle takeoff. Put up that landing gear. We got flaps up. And let me change what time it is, because this sun is like blinding right now. Alright, that's a bit better. Now you can actually see the plane without getting flashbanged by the metallicness. Got our little bomb here. We're gonna be going up and we're just gonna be doing a strafing run and bomb dropping on some poor innocent, like, civilian in one of these houses. First, we need to get up to altitude. Gives me an opportunity to talk about how this thing actually climbs. As you saw by the graphs, it climbs really well at very specific altitudes and not so much at others. This supercharger is like really dependent on that air pressure. Otherwise, it's gasping for breath. While we're climbing, I guess we can go ahead and look at the interior. I can actually show you guys all the things that move around in here. So, of course, we got like our flap lever, got our gear lever, got our air brakes, the throttle quadrant. It does move, but I'm on autopilot right now, so I guess just take my word for it. What else do we got? I even got a little heater. Press H and it turns on the heater and you see the little glow down there in case you get cold or something. And then this, we have our switch. Switch between air targets and ground targets. The actual lines on the sights are arbitrary. Just pretend that the pilots are trained for it. What else do we got? Hidden by this, actually, if I move over here, you can see that there is a bomb lower, which does actually move when you lower the bomb. I know, big surprise there. Yeah, and really not a whole lot else. Just a lot of little like bolts and dials and levers and buttons and switches, as stated earlier. You know, if I was doing this in a jet, there'd probably be a lot less downtime of me just sitting climbing at a whopping 900 feet per minute trying to get up to altitude here. But yeah, we don't really get that luxury with this thing now, do we? I think I see our target. Right there. I think I'm gonna be bombing those cooling towers because they are big and hard to miss. But I suck at aiming, so I will most definitely still be missing. Another little thing I did that you didn't see during the time lapse is I made this little door. It is so it can open and close. Don't really have a reason for this other than I guess it would keep it a little warmer in there if you were up at higher altitudes. But other than that, I just did it because I just needed something back there. No, let's get a look at what the gunner sees. Okay, a little bit of bad news. As I was trying to mess with the camera, I pressed M and dropped our bomb. So it looks like I'm gonna have to do this flight all over again. I'll be back in a second. All right, and we are back. Now with a bomb. All right, let's see if I can get inside here again. I'll just get this lined up. And here we are, look. Little gunner point of view. And you actually use a 4, 5, 6, and 8 on the numpad to move this around. And then of course just space to shoot. Yeah, I really like this. I think this part turned out really awesome. I think this is a really cool view. See, he's got all this little stuff. He's got his little radio, got all this ammo down there. But I think we're getting close to our target, so let's get back to that. All right, we seem to be approaching our target now. I'm gonna go ahead and disable our autopilots. Give me full control. So we're just gonna wait a little bit longer till we're right over top, and we're gonna begin our descent. Let's see here. This should be good, so I'm gonna cut throttle, then reduce my trim to 0, and we're gonna pitch down. We're gonna deploy our air brakes, get those flipped down, all nice. We're gonna lower our bomb. I like to do mouse flight for this, makes it a little bit easier. I'm not gonna do a full vertical dive because I just want to make sure I can actually hit the thing. Coming in nice and slow. Then, boom, drop it. Now I'd call that a direct hit. Maybe I can edit in like a little explosion there. Something, something. Alright, we can go ahead and put those air brakes away and try to throttle up before we crash into the earth. Looks like I just about managed to. Oh my god. Jeez. Alright, well now I'm going to gain some speed again, and we're going to test out this thing's maneuverability. I can kind of show you guys how it performs in that aspect. I'm just giving us a little bit of a speed boost, giving us a modest 60-mile-an-hour tailwind to get us up to speed. Let's see, okay. It's taking its sweet time. Let's bump it up. 87-mile-an-hour tailwind. Alright, there we go. Let's turn off the autopilot, and we're gonna cut the wind speed. Let's pull this up. Let's see what we can pull. Okay, looks like we hit about 21 degrees a second there, so it's not the most maneuverable thing in the skies, but that's what he's for. I think that's pretty good. It's not really meant to be a dogfighter, but it can definitely get out of the way if it needs to. Oh, look at that. Oh yeah, we're basically a zero. And after that successful mission of blowing up that there cooling tower, I'd say the only thing we have left to do is to go and land this thing. So I'll see y'all at the runway. And here we are coming up on the airfield. Gonna go ahead and disengage our autopilot. Go ahead and cut throttle back a little bit. Trim ourselves out to be all nice and level. I think I'm even gonna do this approach in first person. Kind of give you guys an idea of what it would be like for our pilots coming in. Let's go ahead. We're gonna turn on mouse flight. Cut throttle even more. Let's go ahead, put our landing gear down. Oh yeah, I think this is gonna be buttery smooth. Speed's starting to drop now. Put our flaps out all the way for landing. Put our wheel brakes on. There we go. Got our air brake deployed. And it's that easy. We have touchdown. And with that, mission destroy that little cooling tower over there for no reason is a success. Now, I'm gonna hand it back over to editing me to close out this video. One more little editor's note before we finish things off here. Neither mine nor Messier's plane can actually make it to that island we were talking about. You see, when we were picking it, we didn't really think about ranges. We just thought it was small and it would be funny. And well, it is, but I think it's even funnier that neither of our planes can actually make it there. So I guess that's something we should have thought about before we ordered like 2,000 of those planes. We'll figure it out. And with that, I think we're just about done. This video was a ton of fun to make, and of course, huge thanks to Messier for being a part of this. If you haven't already, go subscribe to his channel. He makes a bunch of great flyout content over there, and if you like this, you're gonna love that. And if you're interested in downloading this plane for yourself, it's available in the Flyout Discord server under aircraft sharing, along with all the documents and of course, the extra weapons I made for it. Finally, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and be sure to leave some suggestions on what I should make next down in the comments. Thanks for watching, until next time.